Hampshire. And Bill, why don't you go ahead, take it away? This is the last editorial of the year.
Right. Greetings from Nanook of the North. And it's traditional for the last editorial of the year to reprise the lessons of the old year and make predictions. This week, let's look at 2010 and save 2011 for next week. In January, we began to hear about the Aurora attacks against Google and its peers. By June, these were being characterized as what the U.S. Air Force calls advanced persistent threats. It's not an overstatement to say that some of our largest enterprises are now permanently compromised. It's reported that even the NSA now operates on the assumption that some of their systems are compromised. Rather than short-term financial gain, the objective of these attacks appears to be intellectual property that is essential to the business model. The people who acquire this information may very well go into competition with you. WikiLeaks has published government secrets. Government secrets that leaked as a result of changes in security procedures after 9/11. Changes where need to share trumps need to know. This has resulted in public outrage, government excess, and political reaction. Here, the motivation is political. WikiLeaks is a political institution that believes that transparency and accountability in government ought to trump secrecy in government. The government excess has provoked denial of service attacks against financial institutions that have cooperated with the government. These are also potentially politically motivated. We fight censorship and stand up for truth, WikiLeaks says. However, there are other groups that are focused on the short-term financial gain. The Zeus attacks compromised the systems of bank customers and then used the credentials of those customers to initiate transfers of money from their accounts. The Zeus people also used the internet to recruit mules to extract at least part of the money from the banking system. Notice that they don't have to get it all. They transfer so much that if they can just get part of it out and only have a few mules compromised, they're okay. Some of the mules may even be innocent dupes who think that what they are doing is legitimate. Compromises of personally identifiable information by merchants and payment card industry service providers have accelerated in 2010 to the point that we've sort of started to take it for granted. We don't even report most of these violations anymore. More important, though, this year medical service providers are also reporting compromises of health records. Most of these compromised health records have not been exploited. The biggest expense has been regulatory fines of the medical service providers. We've also seen rogue point-of-sale devices and rogue ATM skimmers. Late this year, we have seen skimmers that text both the card data and the PIN to the perpetrators over the cellular data networks. They don't even have to go back to the device to collect the information. Fortunately, these elegant, beautiful, and convincing devices are still costly, but we can expect to see the price fall from the current price point of about $7,000 for the device. Finally, this has been the year of security in the cloud. While most enterprises may never outsource their core IT, for many applications, cloud services may be so efficient as to compel their use. While the Cloud Security Alliance was formed more than a year before 2010, 2010 was the year that enterprise security managers began to care about it. I gave a series of keynote presentations during the course of the year. And the first question out of everybody's mouth, even though it wasn't part of my topic, was tell us about cloud security. Now, a visit to the CSA website is mandatory and instructive. There is an incredible amount of jargon. Every one of the vendors has different language for expressing to you what their security capabilities are. But if you can read them, you're a lot, and make any sense out of them, you're a lot better than I am. The security function in the enterprise has never been very good at negotiating service level agreements with internal IT, whose security goals align with those of the enterprise, much less with outside vendors. We'll talk about that next week because it's going to be an agenda item for 2011. So 2010 has been an interesting year. We can summarize the target data as personally identifiable information, PII, intellectual property, IP, and government secrets, that is classified data. The target applications, PCI, ATM, and online banking. No surprises here. The lessons are fundamental, if not obvious. We must do a much better job of identifying and protecting our most sensitive data. We must ensure that all data gets the protection that is indicated, but that expensive measures are reserved only for the data that really requires it. We must use defense in depth rather than relying upon a single perimeter. PCI is fundamentally broken. That's the lesson. Magstripe and PIN is vulnerable, not only on payment card systems, but increasingly even on ATMs. That's the lesson of the skimmers. It is past time to move to smart cards. Online banking is vulnerable to targeted attacks and even to opportunistic attacks. Again, past time, in this case, to move to token-based or out-of-band strong authentication. Many of us made decisions about this technology a decade ago and have failed to revisit them, even though the technology has improved dramatically and its cost has fallen. Of course, one characteristic of every year is that we get so focused on what's novel that we forget the fundamentals. We now take for granted the number of patches that we must apply and the fact that this resource is very, very expensive to us. We now take the resources required to apply these patches as a cost of business rather than even as a cost of security. We take for granted that we will have default, weak, and shared privileged passwords. The Verizon incident response team will report again for 2010 that these figure prominently in most of the breaches that they are called upon to address. Failure to address these things will invite punitive regulatory and legislative intervention. For example, the major cost of breaches to the healthcare industry are penalties imposed by the regulators. There's all kinds of legislation working its way through Congress, most of it not very well thought out. In 2010, I lost 2 colleagues, and the field lost 2 of its pioneers. I am reminded that I'm getting a little long in the tooth, and that our founders are mortal, even though historic. Paul Carger worked in trusted systems for as long as we have had the concept. He worked at MIT, the US Air Force, Digital Equipment, GTE, and finally IBM Research. He continued this work while observing that the market had an express preference for systems that are cheap, open, and permissive. Paul would have liked you to know that trusted systems are available and are really cheaper in the long run than the ones that we buy simply on price. Legend has it that Robert P. Abbott's consulting practice was the inspiration for the movie Sneakers. He too was the principal author of the Resource report that documented the major classes of implementation-induced vulnerabilities in computer software. Bob would like you to know that these errors are cheaper to avoid than they are to mitigate. They were professionals, and they got paid the big bucks. See the chat for links to some more information about these pros. See you next week, and we'll talk about 2011.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Enjoy your trip up in New Hampshire, and be safe up there.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.